Hello students, I welcome you all to my YouTube channel, that's Akifa's Commerce Classes. So in today's session, we'll study about calls in arrears. We'll study in detail about what you mean by calls in arrears, and we'll also study about the pro forma journal entry for calls in arrears, and we'll also solve one problem on calls in arrears. Now students, this topic, that is calls in arrears, is very important from your exam point of view, because in any problem that comes for your exam, this entry is most likely to appear. Alright, so calls in arrears is a very important topic in case of shares. So let's start with the meaning of calls in arrears. So when some shareholders, they fail to pay the amount due on allotment on calls, the unpaid amount is known as the calls in arrears. So what is calls in arrears? Whenever any shareholder fails to pay the amount on any of the calls, then it is known as calls in arrears. So at the end of accounting period, all such unpaid balances are transferred to calls in arrears account. And this calls in arrears account, it is shown in the balance sheet as a deduction from the called up capital. Alright. So let's take an example. Let's think of a hypothetical company which wants to raise money through shares. So let's say that the face value of its share is rupees 10. So face value is rupees 10. Alright. The company wants to raise the money in 3 installments. The first installment is the application money, the second is the allotment, and the third is the first and the final call. Okay. So suppose there is a shareholder. For example, Mr. X. Okay. He is a shareholder. So Mr. X pays the first 2 installments. Like you all can say, he has paid application, he has paid allotment. Okay. But he has failed to pay the call money on the call date. So such a situation is known as calls in arrears. On calls, he did not pay the amount. On application, he has paid. On allotment, he has paid. But on calls, he failed to pay. Okay. So such situation, it is calls in arrears. So basically, the failure on the part of a shareholder to pay any of the installments, it is known as calls in arrears. Now you take the same example of Mr. X. The company now what will do? The company will now send a notice to Mr. X. Okay. So this is our company. Company will send a notice to Mr. X. Alright. The company will tell Mr. X to pay the call money. But if Mr. X still fails to pay the call money, then the company will forfeit his share. Forfeit in simple words means cancel. So his shares will be cancelled, that is, he will no longer be the shareholder of the company. And also the company won't refund the amount paid by him in the first 2 installments. So for example, you can say he has paid a certain sum of money in this application. Then for allotment, he has paid a certain amount of money. But he did not pay only here. So after the company informs Mr. X to pay money on the calls, even then if X does not pay, then what will the company do? The company will cancel the shares. Okay. Cancelling is known as forfeiture or forfeit. Alright. So once his shares are forfeited, he is no longer a shareholder to the company. And also what the company will do, the company won't even refer this and this amount which he has already paid. In case of calls in arrears, what happens is, even this amount will not be paid to him. Alright. So this is calls in arrears. So after that, what the company does is, the company will reissue this shares to somebody else. So that reissue part we'll study in the next session. So in this video, we will only focus on calls in arrears. So I hope now the concept of calls in arrears is understood by all of you. What is calls in arrears? When any shareholder, he fails to pay a certain amount of money. Alright. Like in my example, the face value of shares were rupees 10. Then we had a shareholder, Mr. X. Mr. X paid the application money, paid the allotment money, but did not pay the money on calls. So the company, they repeatedly reminded Mr. X to pay the call money, but he failed to do so. So when he failed, what did the company do? The company cancelled his shares. Okay. After cancelling the amount that he paid on application and allotment, even that amount is not refunded to Mr. X. Alright. So let's move on to the pro forma journal entry. The pro forma journal entry is bank account debit, calls in arrears account debit, to share allotment account, and to share call account. Alright. So if there is calls in arrears in share allotment, then you will write it as to share allotment. If it's not in allotment, then it will only be to share call account. and the narration is being allotment money received on shares and calls in arrears bought into accounts. So students, let's solve one problem on calls in arrears so that you all understand the concept more in detail. So the question says that Lucky Manufacturing Company issued 10,000 equity shares of rupees 100 each, payable as follows. On application rupees 10, allotment rupees 20, first call rupees 30 and second call rupees 40. So all the shares were subscribed and the money was duly received except rupees 2,000 on first and the final call. So the company maintains calls in arrears account past the journal entries in the books of Lucky Limited. So in this question, there is something new as compared to the earlier ones. Here we can see that all the shares were subscribed and money was received except 2,000 shares on first and second call. So this amount is our calls in arrears. Alright. So let's start solving with application. The first entry is bank account debit to equity share application account. You get it by multiplying 10,000 into 10. So 1 lakh and 1 lakh. Moving on to the second one, that is equity share application account debit to equity share capital account. The amount will be the same, 1 lakh and 1 lakh, and the narration is being application money transferred to share capital account. Moving on to the third one, that is allotment. Equity share allotment account debit to equity share allotment account. We get the amount by 20 into 10,000, that is 2 lakhs and 2 lakhs. And the narration is being allotment money on 10,000 shares at rupees 20 due. Moving on to our fourth entry, that is bank account debit to equity share allotment. And the narration is being allotment money received, rupees 2 lakhs and 2 lakhs. Moving on to the fifth entry. Now the fifth entry, that is the first entry on calls on first call, it will be the same one as it's always. Like equity share first call account debit to equity share capital account. And we got 3 lakhs, 30 into 10,000, that is 3 lakhs and 3 lakhs. And the narration is being first call money due on 10,000 shares at rupees 30 each. Now in the second entry of calls, we will record the calls in arrears account. Always remember that the first entry of the first call or the second call will be the normal entry. We will record the calls in arrears only in the second entry of the first call and the second call. So here we write it as bank account debit, calls in arrears account debit to equity share first call account. So let's see how did we get this amount. First of all, to equity share first call account, we have to see that the rate of call is 30. The total amount is 10,000. 30 into 10,000 will give you 3 lakhs. Alright. Then you come to calls in arrears. Here we know that the calls in arrears is rupees 2,000. The rate of first call is 30. So 2,000 into 30 will give you 60,000. Alright. So here it is 3 lakhs. Here it is 60. So minus 3 lakhs minus 60,000, it will be 2,40,000. So in our bank we have received only 2,40,000. Alright. So this is how you are supposed to solve problems on calls in arrears. First, write equity share first call account. This amount you get by the total number of shares issued into the rate. 30 into 10, 3 lakhs. Then you see the amount that you have not received. 2,000 into the rate, 60, then minus 3 lakhs and 60,000. You will get as 2,40,000. Okay, and the narration is being first call money received and calls in arrears on 2,000 shares at rupees 30 each bought into account. So moving on to our seventh entry, that is equity share second call account debit to equity share capital account. We get 4 lakhs and 4 lakhs. So 40 into 10,000 will give you 4 lakhs. Alright. Now moving on to the 8th entry where we record the calls in arrears. So bank account debit, calls in arrears account debit, equity share second call account. So how did I tell you all to solve the 6th entry? We start by solving equity share second call account first. So here you see the rate is 40. 40 into the issued share, that is 10,000 into 40. It will give you 4 lakhs. Alright. Then we can see that we have not received 2,000 shares and the rate of second call is rupees 40. So 2,000 into 40. It will give you 80,000. Then you need to subtract 80,000 from 4 lakhs, that is minus 4 lakhs minus 80,000, and you will receive 3,20,000. So this is the actual amount that we have received, that is 3,20,000. So the narration is being second call money received and calls in arrears on 2,000 shares at rupees 40 each bought into accounts. Then after you do this, you have to total both the sides. So the debit and the credit side should be the same. So in this video, we discussed about calls in arrears. You have to know that how you are supposed to solve calls in arrears. Whenever there is calls in arrears in a problem, you should know how you are supposed to record it. It will come in the first call and the second call. The first entry of whether it's first call or the second call will be the normal entry, like how it is in all the previous problems. Only the second entry of the first call and the second call will be a bit different. It will include calls in arrears account. Why it will include calls in arrears account? Because here it's mentioned that all the money was received except rupees 2000. Whenever you find anything like this in the question paper, that is all money were received except so and so amount, then you have to understand that the amount that you have not received is the calls in arrears, and therefore you have to record it into the journal. So this is the entry how you are supposed to solve calls in arrears. If there are any issues or if there are any problems or queries, then please put it down in the comment section. Also, if you liked my today's video, then please like, share and subscribe to my channel. Thank you.